Hello. This is a demonstration of drawing a cumulative frequency graph for MEIS1. I'm going to use January 2008 question 8. So let's have a quick read, as ever, of what the question asks us. It says, the total number of hours of sunshine recorded in Cambridge during the month of January over the last 48 years is summarised below. So we've got hours and we've got number of years. So all these figures here add up to 48. And on top here, we've got our class widths that we're going to use in drawing our graph. Now let's be clear, it's a cumulative frequency graph. That means it's drawn to scale. It has a scale along the bottom of hours, and in the vertical we are going to be putting our number of years. That's our frequency, and that again will be to scale. Those are first key points. The next one is the hours of day of sunshine is continuous data. We therefore, the important thing, recognizing that we are going to present this data as it's continuous in our cumulative frequency graph. That is the only place we can be sure, looking at this first item range, it's between 70 and 100 hours. Well, we know the only point we can be sure of is that the total to 100 hours cumulatively is 6. So let's have a read and just check out what we've got to do. Draw a cumulative frequency graph for these data. So the first thing we actually need is cumulative frequency graph is we need to calculate the cumulative frequency. I'm going to write it out here. In the exam, you could probably just write your numbers directly below the table that they've actually given you, but I'm going to draw them out here so that we can see what we're doing. So we've got a point, we've got hours, and we've got number of years. Yep, that's our frequency. That's going to be our frequency. Yep, years. First group then, 70 to less, H to 100. So we know we've got 6. The important thing to bear in mind here is below 70, therefore, we have 0 at 70, the frequency. We're now going to calculate the cumulative, and at the end of this period, our cumulative frequency here is 6. Our next range is 100 hours to 110. So at the end of the 100, at 110, we had an additional 8 hours. So we've now reached 14 cumulatively. 110 to 120. Well, in this range we had 10. So our figure is now 24 cumulatively. 120 to 150. Our cumulative is 11 to add to it, 11 to add, which means that, excuse me, let's just rewrite that, 150, so we've got to add 11, so we're now at 35. 150 to 170 is our next range. So at the top end of that range, we now have, excuse me, back in place, please. Our range is, we've added 10, so our cumulative is now 45 at 170, and then we've got our 170 to 190, and we got 3 in this, so at the end our cumulative is 48. So the figures we're going to graph are these cumulative frequencies, and we're going to position them. So we're going to have 0 at 70, we're going to have 100, so it's 6 at 100, we're going to have 14 at 110, we're going to have 24 at 120, we're going to have 35 at 150, we're going to have 45 at 170, and we're going to have 48 at 190. So those are the figures that we are going to graph. I now need to move on and actually draw the graph, and I need some graph paper for that, so I'll just import that and then we'll start filling in the graph. Okay, so we need to get to 48 in the vertical, and we need to go from about 70 to 190 in the horizontal. So let's just, so we need probably about 48, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our 5. So we start here at the bottom corner. I'm going to start from here. That could be our vertical. Excuse me, you will do it with a proper ruler. I'm going to do it here with, and so we can see what we're doing. So let's have, on the vertical scale, our bottom point is 0, and then we're going 10 there, 20, 30, 40 and 50. We know we're going up to 48, aren't we, as the final position. I'm going to start at 70 here, because we know that's our lowest point. 70, 90, 110, 130, 150, 170 and 190, and that is our, this is our hours of daylight, hours of daylight, and the vertical is our frequency, which is number of years. Okay, so we know that the start of our data is that below 70 hours of daylight there are no points. So we're going to start, we're effectively creating a point that's not in our data set. That's going to be our lowest point. We know that below 100 hours of daylight there are only 6 years, so we're going to mark our 6 there at the 100 point and 6. Our next point is cumulatively at 110 we've got 14, then at 120 we had 24, so that's 24. At 150 we had 35. At 170 we had 45, and at 190 we had 48. So there's our points. We can now either join them with a curve, or we can do straight lines between the points. Apologies, not straight enough. There we go. So we've now got a straight line graph here. I've done it in straight lines. You could have put a curve through it. We've got, it's properly labeled throughout, and we've got all the data that we need. I mean, what that was, let's just go back up and see. That's worth 5 points, doing what we've just done there. Okay, what's our next step? Our next step on the is part 6 of this question. Use your graph to estimate, we're only estimating the 90th percentile. So we're going to estimate 90th percentile. Estimate 90th percentile. Okay, well, we know that the full height, the full sample is for 48 years. Therefore, 90% of that is going to be 0.9 times 48 is going to give us 43.2 years. Okay, we happy with that? Because what we're now going to do is just come across, we could mark our side 43, did I write? Let's just check that I wrote that correctly. Yeah, 43.2, that's going to be our 43.2, and we can come across in that line. If you would be drawing this with a pair of with a ruler, wouldn't you? And we come all the way across here, to this point, and then we'd be able to go down. We're pretty well on that line. You can see that as you're going to do this, it's an estimate, and they're going to give you a range of answers. So there's 150. So this is the range 150 to 160. So there's 20 points each one of these. Therefore, small squares is worth 4 hours. So the point we've just worked out here, when it hits down here, that is 166. We agreed? Okay, so once we've done that, therefore, that from graph, we can read off from graph, that equates to 166 hours of daylight. There we go. And I don't remember how many marks we get for doing that. We get 2 marks for identifying the 90% point as being 43.2, and a mark for picking out the 166. So that was pretty worthwhile so far, wasn't it? Okay, as ever, here's my little summary of cumulative frequency graphs. First thing you need to do is you need to calculate your table, or you need to calculate your cumulative frequency. I'd recommend doing that in a table. If it is continuous data, make sure that you mark your points at the right hand end. That's the point where you know that all of the values, all the cumulative frequency must be at that point or below. So that's the only valid place. If they ask you to find a percentage point, a percentile, it could ask you to find the median, upper or lower quartile. Then you calculate that number from the data like we did earlier. So it's 50% of whatever the number was here. It was 48 for a median, or 25% for a lower quartile. You find that number, so it's either 24 for the median here. Then you're going to mark your line. You're going to mark that on your frequency, and you're going to draw a cross till you hit your line, and we're going to go down, because the answer is actually the X value for the percentile or median. That's the figure you need to read off. That's find your X. And there you are. That was about 8 marks. Quite like to come up. So really do mug up on it. And there you are. Very best of luck.